Jake. Great to see you.
Awesome. Great to see you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Well, your story is definitely rings very true to so much of what ICL represents and your journey. And so many of our partners, families, want to be able to share the purpose of our champion webinars is just, really kind of showcase ICL's 6 Ps. How do you take your passion, make it your purpose, create a process by which you can really achieve your goals, and then going beyond that and the perseverance it takes, right? No, it's never a hockey stick. You never have anything that goes exactly as planned, and then as we get older, you gain perspective and ultimately make your journey a personalized one. So I think that I'd love to kind of tell everyone a little, as you were sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, and we're going to have a discussion that really that transition, being a player, junior player, playing in college, pursuing that, going into coaching and understanding what the sport gives you, and now working in the business of sport, both as a coach, going to the university level, training some of the top juniors, but also working on a lot of the performance and the mental side of it, which is so important and really makes a huge difference. And your work with Dr. Lair and APEAK and all the way back. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's bring us back to the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, that's a long story. I hope y'all are ready for it. So I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. I started playing tennis at 4 years old. My dad has been a coach in Texas for 30 plus years now. Ran multiple different academies and different sites around San Antonio and South Texas. So kind of grew up with a racket in my hand. I took to it pretty young. I won some cool tournaments as a young one, Little Mo and all that good stuff. And then just worked my way through the rankings. I'll be very honest, I was never the phenom, so to speak. I was never, I was lucky to be like top 10 in the state of Texas. And, we traveled around to a few national tournaments, but not too many. But from there, I got into college tennis. I got really fortunate. I did homeschool in my high school from sophomore year all the way till I was done with high school. I did a program. I won't mention their name because it really wasn't a good experience. That's what really led me to seek out you guys at the USPTA conferences. It's such a game changer what you guys are doing. If I would have had something like ICL in my life at that age, it would have been such a difference maker. But be that as it may, I did make it through, and I actually went to a junior college for my first 2 years, Tyler Junior College in Tyler, Texas. Played 2 years there. Was fortunate to be an All-American and win a national championship with them. I then transferred to Indiana University in Bloomington. Ran into a difficult set of circumstances, coaching and NCAA rules, just a lot of red tape. So I was kind of forced to transfer again, and I transferred home to University of Texas at San Antonio, where I did ultimately finish up.
Amazing. And then your playing career, how did that then transition? Because what even working backwards, what inspired you to get into this, the area of youth, performance and the focus on that, having worked a lot with, some of the top juniors in the country and in the world?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As a junior, I was very determined. I was very, my work ethic was probably my strongest point. I'm not the greatest athlete. I don't pick things up necessarily the quickest, but I am very driven to figure it out. Mentally, I was constantly looking for an answer. I was very how do you say, energetic, you could say, in the nicest way. I was a little crazy on the court at times, definitely, especially as a young one. And so that led me to just, I would watch Dr. Lair and the 16-second cure. I would try to practice that as much as I possibly could. Jorge Valverde was another great doctor, great sports psychologist that had a great system in place. I was very lucky to attend the Austin Tennis Academy, and they were really pioneers in the mental training space. Jack Newman, who's the director down there, just kind of changed my life with the way that he looked at tennis and the mental training aspect, and the school aspect. They were one of the first ones to kind of have a college prep program within their academy. And they've, luckily been able to do it successfully, which not many have, which again is another reason that many people need ICL. But
And
yeah, that's been kind of the journey.
you mentioned, having a dad as a coach, and then ultimately, running academies. And, do you think that you've picked up things along the way? So many of our students are here, you have other coaches. Everyone's journey is unique, but I think that there are similar shared lessons that go through it. So I think that transfer, you had the work ethic, were there a couple key moments or key times that you could point to that made that difference, when you would make a jump in the rankings, or some sort of lessons that were really important to you?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest I've had two major injuries in my life. When I was 15, I had a stress fracture in my back, put me out for about 6 months. During that time, going through any major injury or trauma, you kind of reassess and you see where you are and what needs to be improved and how you're going to improve it. That was a really pivotal moment for my junior career, where I decided that I needed to take a step forward. That's when I decided to homeschool, because I really needed some extra hours on the court. I needed that extra time. That was a time that I, picked out some key weaknesses that I was able to work on and improve my game. And that's what really got me to be able to be good enough to compete at a college level. The other time was actually in college, where I had a major surgery. It's just a freak thing that I had a artery blocked in my stomach. So it's kind of an emergency surgery, but again, put me out for 6 months, 8 months, before I transferred to Indiana. And again, it was just a reassessment. I'm moving up to the Division I level, Big Ten tennis. I needed to reassess not only tennis, but mentally, and what I wanted to do. Did I really want to pursue this, keep pursuing this? And the perseverance needed to almost restart in a way. It took kind of almost a miracle in a way to keep me going. So I love being able to share that with other coaches and players, especially.
Well, that's really important. That's what I wanted to kind of hone in on. We've had a lot of speakers who have come in that have come back from injury at every level. The highest level, Tommy Haas may have set the record with 9 surgeries, and that perseverance. But the impact that a coach has, right? Because the perseverance, when you're down, when it looks like you can't come back, how important have kind of coaches been in your life, and your transition to actually want to become a coach? Were there certain things that you felt that coaches really helped you in able to overcome and continue on your journey, and what drew you to becoming a coach?
Yeah, 100%. I've had several coaches in my life that are just a lot more than coaches. They're people that are father figures, brothers, best friends type of people. My junior college coach, Dash Cannell, was the first one in my college career, obviously, but he was just unbelievably impactful. He came from a similar background and everything, and so we really related to one another. And he was very young at the time. He was 25, I believe, when he took over. And so just going through that with him and him guiding me, I would beg him to hit with me and be on the court. I would just bug him constantly. And it wasn't so much about being on the court. It was more about getting to pick his brain about, okay, this strategy, or so-and-so is doing this off the court. How can I help them? I was always trying to help my teammates, kind of more so than myself, because I knew that for us to win, we needed everybody to be on the same page, not just me. So That was a really big one. My father, of course, was obviously the biggest motivator in my life, and he was always supportive. You hear the typical tennis parents that are very hard and very tough on the player, on the students, forcing them to play. My dad never forced me to play. Never, was hard on me. Never yelled at me anything about tennis. I mean, he could not have been more supportive, more positive. And so he was such a big impact. And then finally, I could list 20 people, but another one was Jeff Cater, who was my coach at UT San Antonio, and now he's the coach at William and Mary. Jeff was like a brother to me, and for me, the best coaches know when it's the time to be disciplined and strict, and when it's the time to be able to have fun and talk and converse about anything other than tennis. And Jeff was just that. He was so supportive in everything I wanted to do, and forever thankful for those people.
And in your work, which is, so many of our kids are young phenoms, the hope. We always talk about you train to be a pro, right? Everyone, you can't get on a tennis court and say, wow, I hope to one day play on a college tennis team. I mean, you play, you get on the court to win that US Open, that Wimbledon trophy.
Absolutely.
It's hard when you have the setbacks, but I guess, when you work with top juniors, or you see that level change, are there any keys that you see fundamentally that those kids that make the breakthrough? Because here at ICL we have kids that are number one in the country from 12s all the way up to 18s, but some that are working their way up, and that transition. Have you seen are there any patterns that you've seen, like in growth, when people kind of assume and get to their best? Because we're entering a new age. And I'll just share, to people out there, and I'm sure that we've had these conversations around, the dinner table, but you have this new breed, right? Everyone 2 years ago was talking about what happens when Fed, Djokovic, Nadal leave. Oh, what happens to tennis? We haven't seen the young players perform. And I remember we were talking to Mats Wilander, who had won a slam at 17, and Monica Seles at like the youngest at 15.
Yeah.
And they said, wow, those days, the teenagers, or you don't see that anymore. And then, 6 months later, you see Carlos Alcaraz, number one in the world, teenager. Now you see Holger, beating Novak. Are you seeing a trend of, when kids are peaking or anything like that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I kind of have two answers to it, and they're both kind of cliches, but they're super true. The first one is just trusting the process. A lot of coaches, a lot of players, I should say, do think that the grass is greener in another spot, in another academy, another coach. And it's not to say you won't get better by going to another coach. But if you've had success with somebody you're working with, I would sincerely hope that you continue to trust what they're doing with you. The biggest thing I see with young players, and even college and professional players that I've worked with, is when they have a buy-in to what they're doing. That's the biggest difference maker. You see all these players with the funkiest technique you've ever seen. Medvedev with these crazy strokes, nobody, Jack Sock with the forehand that now everybody has, right? That's stuff that any pro, if they saw them, would say, no, we got to change this, we got to change that. But those guys bought into what they were doing at a really young age, and they just stuck with it. And now they're doing pretty well. So that buy-in is so important. And of course, there's always times that a change is necessary. But I would be very hesitant in making that change. The other thing I would say, and it's actually really cool, I got to talk to Carlos Alcaraz at the US Open, and right before he played his semifinal match. And I just asked him, hey, Carlos, I'm a coach. What would you tell kids? What would you tell players right now? Or if you could tell yourself at 12, what would you tell yourself?
What would you tell yourself 3 years ago?
I know, right? Exactly. But his answer was so cool. I mean, he just said to have fun. He said having fun is the most important thing, because if you're having fun, You get to work, you're going to work hard, you're going to want to do more, you're going to be determined. And he mentioned a time, in Montreal, that he wasn't having a good time. And he actually went to his coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, and said, I think maybe we should shut it down for the year because I'm not enjoying this anymore. I don't want to do this. And so they actually took some time off and took a week or two off. And then, of course, the rest is kind of history at this point. So
Isn't that amazing? I mean, we talk about fun because, you know, whether it's, and I always apply this to academics, right? Like what doesn't seem like fun or studying, if you know you're following a purpose and you know it's going to benefit you,
right.
sacrifice, the word sacrifice, you're not really sacrificing because you're doing what you love. And I want to shift gears a little bit because you got into the mental side, right? You've gone player, coach, and now you're working at such an fascinating, cutting edge area of the game, which is that sort of gray area in between. Everyone has a big forehand. We know how important footwork is. We know taking, breathing, but that mental side. And so you're focusing a lot of your time now with APEAK. Do you want to talk about how and why you got involved, and quickly what it is and how it helps players?
Sure. Yeah. Again, mental training for me growing up was the biggest area of need. And so I was always searching. And then as a coach, again, I wanted to be able to help my players. I wanted my players to always be the most prepared. That was always my goal. That's my spiel to every player I coach and team that I coach is we are going to be the most prepared team. And a big part of that is being mentally prepared. So learning how to visualize, learning how to set goals, journaling, mental skills in between points, how you deal with certain situations on the court. All these things are so important and so overlooked so often. And so when Brian Park, the CEO of APEAK, approached me originally about just working with my players, I said, yes, absolutely. This is a no-brainer. And then since then, the app has just gotten so much more intuitive and so much better. There's just so much more. When I first used it, there was only kind of mental skills, and really that was it. And now we are doing the mental skills. We do visualizing, meditating, journaling, goal setting. Everything is within the app, and even better, coaches can now monitor and track the players so they can keep the players a little bit more accountable as well. So APEAK has been just a new passion for me, because I, more so than tennis, I love helping people, like I said before, and APEAK is able to reach so many people through their platform. So I am thrilled to get to be a part of something so special.
So what are those key things that you find, or the couple things that people can take away, whether it's the journaling, or what are the specific areas that they can really improve, that you've seen with APEAK, and that focus that coaches can understand, and just you've seen that huge difference?
Yeah, visualizing is the biggest thing. There are study upon study about visualizing, and if I may, there's a Cleveland study that half the participants only visualized a certain movement, and the other half actually practiced the movement. They did this for about 6 weeks. The control group that was only visualizing was actually increased strength 30%, whereas the people that practice it increased 50%. And so I think that says it all. But what that really says is that, you can get better without even stepping on the court. At night, you can get those extra reps in just in your head if you can learn how to visualize, and visualize properly using all your senses. And this is everything that Dr. Lair has gone through for so many years, but now we have it all within a really easy to use and really cool looking app. So I hope players and coaches will use it.
And are there keys what you see in sort of visualization, like quick drills if people aren't used to doing it, or coaches can put before practice? Are there other like quick sort of snippets that you would suggest?
Yeah, two things
Never
I would
really
say.
brought up to me. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, is using all your senses, trying to use all 5 of your senses when you're visualizing, to feel it, to smell it, to touch it, everything. Trying to use those senses. And also just being able to learn how to quiet your mind. I know that goes into meditation. I'm going to brag on Austin Tennis Academy and Jack Newman again. I can't speak highly enough about them, but they've done this for years where they do alpha and omega. They'll do alpha before practice, a quick 3-minute just breathing exercise, close the eyes, relax, and center yourself. And then omega at the end, which is a similar exercise, but you're kind of going over in your head what you worked on that day. So yes, I would say those are our keys for anybody to do.
That's awesome. I mean, we have a couple questions here. You want to come up, sort of what are the priority qualities of a mind working at its best? Like, how would you define on that mental side when you're at your best?
Wow, that's a great question. Am I frozen there? I'm so sorry. Uh-oh.
You're meditating on it. Oh, okay, we're gonna bring. Yeah, Brian, do you want to ask your question? If I think if Jake gets unfrozen, seems like I think we caught him in a meditative state.
Oh, he's at peace. He's thinking. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, his computer may have gone out. Okay, well, he's coming. There he is. We got him meditate. We have like 2 life forms of Jake.
Are we there?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. A little laptop snafu there, but sorry. Could you redo the question there? My apologies.
Yeah, no worries. I was just curious, when you think about all the different like activities that we engage in as coaches, as players, to put ourselves in an optimal frame of mind for performing, competing at our best, whatever the task is at hand. I'm curious, if you boil it down, are there a set of core priority qualities we're aiming at, that we're trying to help a player, or in particular a player, develop, that helps them be at their best?
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic question. It's not a question and answer maybe or you're gonna like, but it's going to be different for every player. For me personally, I'm a very high energy person. So I need to let out a little bit more emotion than say a Pete Sampras would, who was just so stoic. So I think the first step in that is finding out how that player is going to work best. But the bottom line is they have to be able to relax. I am most relaxed when I look most tense, that not many people are like that. But that's just, the way I thought best. And I still think best when I'm a little bit more stressed out, it looks like. But I like that feeling of being stressed out, so to speak. So I know that's probably not the answer you're exactly looking for. With tennis, there's just never a one size fits all, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You have a great second question too, I think is great.
Actually, it kind of relates to what you were just talking about, Jake, which is neat, which is about personality, because I'm in the business of problem solving. Right? That's one of the things I do with corporations as well as with athletes. And we know tennis is a context for problem solving. Right. So the question is, what are and we know in the business world and other places that preferences affect the way we approach problem solving. So I'm curious, on the tennis court, are there what are the potential impacts that personality has on someone's readiness to engage at their best, or is influenced by the environment and how it either helps them or hinders their ability to be at their best? So basically, how does personality influence someone's readiness to take on a high performance state of mind, for example?
Yeah, no, again, great question. Getting to work with the guys at Harvard was a great example of this. Some of those guys, most of those guys, I shouldn't even say it, all of those young men are incredibly intelligent. But their personalities just could not be more different. A young man, Harry Walker, is hyper intelligent, has so much thought going on in his head at all times. And that's when he's most at peace. You know, he can assess things very quickly and, you know, just keep going. There was another young man, Steven's son, again, highly intelligent person, but was a lot more laid back. He didn't want to necessarily think so much about what was going on. A big thing when I was coaching college tennis, and the guys would make fun of me for it, but on the changeover, be like, all right, man, what are we doing next? What's the plan here? And Harry would tell me detail. We're doing this, this, and this. This is his weakness. I need to do this. Okay. Steven would look at me, laugh, and say, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And it was like, all right, man, we'll figure it out. Let's do it. Sounds good. So yeah, I mean, again, it just comes back down to the individual personality and not trying to make them do something else. I loved Pete Sampras. He was my absolute idol. I wanted to be just like him. I couldn't compete like that. I tried for many years as a junior to compete like Pete and, you know, just not say a word, not do anything. It wasn't to my advantage. It wasn't to my favor. So
Thank
Yeah,
you
that
so
makes
much.
sense. Yeah.
That was really helpful. Jack, how are you? Good to see you. You have a question?
Good. How are you doing?
Jack and Jake. Let's bring
There we
it
go.
up.
So my question was just looking into what the admissions process looked like for Harvard tennis recruits, how impactful the academic side of things were.
Oh goodness, super impactful. Yeah, there are no free entrances, so to speak. There are so many great tennis players around the country that obviously want to go to Harvard and any of the Ivy League schools. But there are no easy ways of getting in. You have to have the GPA, you have to have the test scores, and you even have to have more extracurriculars. You know, taking part in volunteering as much as you can. You know, participating in anything that's going to set you apart, just like the normal admissions process would be. Obviously, you have a small advantage being a fantastic tennis player. It does help. But it only helps in the way that it sets you apart from everybody else. It's not going to be, definitely won't be the reason that you get into Harvard or any of those fantastic schools.
And we had I had a conversation with Coach Rube that, you know, really when we were playing, I played at Dartmouth and he was number one at Harvard at the time. And then, well, he's now, you know, the head coach, and he was on the team both with James Blake and with Tom Blake, and talked about what these things were. And it was funny not knowing about ICL, our relationship with Dr. Lair. You know, he said character. He said they look for character,
Oh, 100%.
like unbelievably. And I was so shocked to hear that. As you know, you're like, you know, I was sort of asking that, you know, Jack, to say, hey, for our students, you know, I want to help our kids get into Harvard. Like what you know, what is it? Because I know obviously test scores, obviously, but the team component in college is you're looking for, you know, who is going to be, where's the growth potential, who becomes a leader, because a lot of times the coaching staff is there to tweak, to kind of give support, but it's the team element, and it makes up when you get a group of guys. It's a little bit like basketball, you know, the difference in why a lot of the superstar teams don't gel. You know, if you have a James Blake on your team, it doesn't mean you're going to win NCAAs. I mean, it really falls down to like the doubles points, the number 6 player. I mean, everyone has to show up. And so the idea is that the better players, for the most part, you know, it's about how does everyone have an element to make everybody else better. And that comes down to the character as well. So I think
Perfectly said. Yes.
it's key. But yeah, hopefully we can, Jack, if you're looking into Harvard, let's talk offline about that, and let's make it happen. But
There we go.
I think so. I think you know, first
Okay.
you can improve, and then you can beat James Blake, and then, you know, you start just moving your way up.
There it is. It's too easy.
I know. Thanks a lot. Ashok, how about you? Good to see you. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So I was just wondering if there's like a specific trait that all the most successful players had, or was it like everybody was different?
Oof, that's a good question as well. There's many traits that I think that they all have. Determination, focus, the ability to persevere. I mean, you talk about the 6 Ps. I think they have all of them, purpose, passion, process, perspective. What are my last two here? Come on.
Perseverance.
Personalization.
By the way, and what the question is, what's so fascinating is the personalization. What I always say in coaching as well, and you probably see, we mentioned, like, you don't go out and teach a forehand like Jack Sock, but if someone feels that and you see, wow, this person, it's not going to hinder them, but they can make up, become great. I think that there are some universals that everyone has, I think, that separate. Tennis is such a funky sport because sometimes if you go, have you ever been to a live, like the US Open or any live pro tennis event? Have you seen it, a show? Have you been to any of the top, like the Grand Slams or anywhere?
No, I haven't.
So the craziest thing, if you get a chance to see pros and you don't look at the names and you don't know, and you go on a court and you see Novak Djokovic hitting with another player, I remember to me, I thought that other player was 10 times better than him. Like, the guy looked like he was hitting bigger balls on both sides. And that player across the way was 390 in the world. So the difference at that highest level, I mean, so much of it, and you can't really put one or the other. So much is mental. So much also footwork, stamina. I mean, I still don't know how Carlos Alcaraz played, 4, 5
no sense.
row. It's like mind. So, there are physical gifts, but there's that mental, there's that champion mindset, that gene that just, is something that separates that top 10 player from the 100 to the 300. And that's the sport, right?
Yeah, Ashok, if I could say one more thing, learning how to problem solve is key. If you can learn how to problem solve at your age, it's going to make you such a better tennis player, but just a better human being as a whole. Because this whole life thing and tennis are all about problem solving.
Yeah, we've had Novak Djokovic has actually been done a lot for ICL, and he and his coaching staff said, if you think of tennis as a game of a sport of questions and answers, every time a ball comes to you, it's a question, and you have a choice in how you answer it. And the amount of mental things that go through your mind on how you can hit different strokes, and that's what goes back to what Jake was talking about earlier. That's the visualization, because when you are in the match, there's so much going on, but you want to calm yourself to not have the noise. When you work on visualization, you will have already played that point before with different options. If someone gives me this, what is my response? Knowing your body, your strokes. And part of it is knowing, I mean, Pete Sampras, and I don't know if a lot of the students here remember Pistol Pete, but we had a story. One of our champions, Tommy Haas, came on and said, I couldn't believe my mind. I was a training fanatic, and I would work out with Pete, hardest worker, leading up to a tournament. But then in the tournament, when he went to warm him up and they had a 45-minute session, Pete, he said, after 9 minutes, he took 3 serves, hit a couple balls, and literally said, yeah, I think I'm going to win Wimbledon. Like, he was so, he just knew, and he had this serve that, like, in his mind, he knew that even if he was down love 40, he knew that he could hit 4 aces if need be. That was his confidence. And he said, if I get one chance to break the guy, there's no way I'm going to get my serve broken. There was a mental, like, Hercules about that mindset, and he backed it up, right? I think he won 5 or 6 Wimbledon. So it's like but it's a great question. And so many of these great players are so different. I love watching some of the documentaries, the McEnroe Borg era,
so cool.
The beautiful thing between like a Roger and Rafa, they're so different, but yet so similar, but the way they approach, they still have a mental edge. I think, the physical is there. You can't get to the top without the physical, but I think the physical gets you to a certain level. And then it's that extra little mental edge, which I wish we could bottle it and sell it. We'd all become
right. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, exactly.
That's so interesting about APEAK, and to be able to do that, to understand, we can talk on a webinar how important it is to journal your thoughts or to visualize, but when you actually start getting into routines, a lot of the top pros say, routines become so important to them. The positive reinforcement, convincing yourself, like changing your mindset, that two shoulders, your Yoda, your inner decision maker that tells you to keep going. And all those things, if you start young, it just gets easier and easier. That's
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that question. We have, oh my God, we were flying by. We have so much of going on. I guess, there is a lot of questions here about visualization. How do you teach, visualization? Are there any key starter kits to people that haven't visualized? And, what age can you start? And can you go in a little bit more depth about the five senses and that visualization technique?
Yeah, so honestly, I think any age is appropriate to start visualizing. If you can close your eye, I think we've all done it at a very young age with our imagination. We all had, some kind of imagination, whether it was imaginary friends or, what have you, at a young age. But that's a part of visualizing and learning how to visualize. So actually within APEAK, we start players off with a how-to, so to speak, how to properly visualize. And that actually talks about how to engage your five senses. So if you were to just close your eyes right now, and try to just visualize yourself listening to this webinar. You engage your touch, the feel with how you're sitting, what it feels like where you're sitting, the air maybe that's going against your skin, what you're hearing. You can engage all these senses every time that you're visualizing, and it's not going to be perfect the first time. It's going to take practice. And the more you do it, the more you're going to be easily able to engage those senses. And it'll get to a point that you're even able to do this with your eyes open. If you talk to any player, inside a certain level, they're going to tell you that in between points, they're visualizing right before the point starts. Novak talks about it, that he visualizes the point before he plays it. And that's happening in less than 5 seconds. So yeah, the more you practice it, like Kirk was saying, at a young age, if you're able to start doing things like this, it's going to pay huge dividends later down the road.
That's great. And I think, again, now we have these opportunities that to have apps that can help us, right? Like, it's like we go to the gym, sometimes having someone lead you, we all know what we're supposed to do, but we have someone there guiding. And now when you can track it or have sort of a, how do we utilize technology to be able to fast track that? Because just, it's very hard. When I started learning visualization, I was old and things clutter your mind. Visualization, meditation are all similar, but that feel, there's some pros that actually, they were back in the day, some would have certain things for touch, the big volleyers. I knew of a player, and I can't remember who it was, I think, who actually had thumbtacks in his pants, and he would actually prick himself. Wow. Because he wanted to make sure he had the feel when he would come to the net to really be able to like almost have his senses exposed to feel the racket. So I'm going to bring up Sarah real quick. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
All right. I think some players want to go to Harvard. We have a couple of Harvard related questions.
Do it. Yeah, let's get you there.
Sarah's getting ready. Exactly.
Okay, so I was wondering what differentiates Harvard tennis team from other Ivy League schools. Like, what makes you guys stand out, or what makes you different?
Oof. Other than we're better than Dartmouth, for sure.
We're definitely gonna have a little bit of an argument here.
No, I'm good friends with the Dartmouth coaches. They're awesome. Every Ivy League school is fantastic. Harvard, what I would say is the difference maker. The coaches and the booster, the people that are behind the program are just phenomenal. Andrew Rube and Sanam Singh are second to none in the nation. Just as a duo, those guys work so hard with those guys. and really give them their everything. I've been around a lot of college tennis, a lot of junior tennis, obviously. I've yet to see two coaches that work together so seamlessly and complement each other so well. So I would say that's a big difference maker, but also just the culture of Harvard. You know, I can't speak to the other Ivies. I haven't been a part of their programs, but Harvard was so special in the way that the team is always together. You know, the guys are so close and they have such a special bond with one another. And I think this is true for many tennis teams. We're very tight knit squad, but those guys were it just felt a little bit different. The character and everything that they brought to the table was phenomenal.
And I'll say, you know, on a general note, just for the difference to start thinking about the college process, it's so different than junior tennis, right? I mean, it's exactly, you know, what Jake is talking about. It's not just Harvard, but when you make a decision on where to go, you know, coaches are really important. Who do you mesh with? Asking questions, what's their style of training? Are they really, you know, are they just workhorses that they're going to like push you physically? Are they going to work with you individually? And then what's the team makeup? Because when you decide on a 4-year school, like Jake referred to, like you eat together, you go to parties together, like that's your squad. And, you know, you have to get a sense of how that meshes. You can ask what a coach is looking for in recruits, you know, the same way. The great thing is it's the first time, the same way they're interviewing you, you can interview them.
Yes.
And really understand. And we've made it a point. It's funny at ICL, you know, we've kind of had speakers from across the board, right? The top 10 pros that we all want to get there, right? We all want to be playing the US Open. We all want to know what it was like. Next week, we have a webinar. You know, I was so excited because I remember watching him beat Andre Agassi in his farewell match, but he's also coaching now. Yeah, Benny Becker. You know, again, great story of someone who wasn't that good at junior. You know, we heard Todd Martin last year gets the finals of Wimbledon talk about not making Kalamazoo nationals, but college tennis can, you know, and that college experience is so interesting because Todd Martin talked about choosing a school where it wasn't Stanford. He didn't want to go where he would play 6 or 7 on the team or maybe get up and try to break the top 5. It was like, where can I go to play 1 or 2? And that made all the difference. And when you hear from, you know, Benny Becker, he talks about Baylor being the game changer for him. And the guy had a 12-year pro career getting in the top 40 in the world. You know, and so, you know, getting back to your question in Harvard, each school is unique. And I think that, but also it changes in years, right? I mean, Dartmouth tennis is very different. I mean, you know, I'm very good friends with the Columbia coach or Stanford. Like Stanford in my era was unbeatable. I mean, you couldn't even, if you were 20 in the country, don't even think about playing at Stanford because they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the country. We're all playing. Like that's different now. Now college has tremendous amount of international students. I mean, you're getting the best players from Serbia and, you know, Italy and Mexico. It's all over the world. So it's a very different vibe now, but, you know, I think, you know, to your question, I hate to be plugging Harvard, but it is Harvard. Like there is something, you know, there is something about it there. And it, you know, while you're there, you know, Sergio had a question too, which was, you know, as a coach, these relationships go on long after. And it said, you know, your players at Harvard, when they leave college tennis, you know, do you stay in touch with people? You know, I'm sure that Harvard, like anywhere else, you build relationships for life. I found.
Oh, 100%. Those Harvard guys and, you know, all my previous coaching experiences, you know, a lot of those guys are still very much in communication. And, you know, they're people that tennis is so cool that it's so global, you know. So if my wife and I, when we go to Europe, you know, we're getting to stop in certain cities and countries to say, hey, and we get these awesome experiences that are very unique. You know, and so it's such an amazing experience to be a part of any college team at any level, because you're just building these relationships for life. And it's not only with the tennis team. I have some of my best friends are from the soccer team when, you know, I was playing, and the baseball team, and, you know, you build relationships with all sorts of people from all walks of life. It's really an amazing experience that everybody should try to take part in if they can.
There's so many questions popping in now. I feel like questions start flowing in right when we're like at our last couple, but I'm going to try to
bring them on.
I'm going to try to speed them up, but I'm sort of at the end. I'm just looking. It's a buddy who coached at University of Richmond in the 80s. This is a great question. The evolution of the mental game or the mind-body game in the last 20 years, more widespread option realization about. I look. This is where I think an AP comes in, or a Dr. Lair. There's no doubt that the mind-body connection starts younger. And before you kind of answer that, I'll say that, being from back in the Stone Age myself, I went to the top college tournament this weekend where you were at Barnes. And
right.
I just kept saying to everyone, I said, this is a different level of college tennis than I've ever seen, or I had been a part of, even playing a guy like James Blake and, seeing guys reach the top. There is a physicality that is very different these days. The training, the prehab, the post-match, just, I could tell the teams that were there and the coaches conducted themselves in a very different way than, the early 90s or late 80s, happened. So I don't know if you have a comment on that.
I mean, even at the professional level, I was lucky enough to be at the US Open with a player or two, and at the ATP 250 that we had at Barnes. And the coolest part was sitting in the locker room or the gym and watching these players go through their pre-match, pre-practice routines. I'm watching Casper Ruud before his semifinal match in the locker room, and he's just laying down, visualizing. And he was there. I told myself, I'm not going to leave until he does. I want to see every part of this routine that he goes through. And this young man was laying down for 45 minutes, eyes closed. You would have thought he was asleep. 45 minutes, 15 minutes before the match, before he's set to go out onto the court, he pops up like as fast as lightning, just pops up out of nowhere, starts jumping up and down, typical Rafa-esque, if you've seen him in the tunnel before the matches, just jumping up and down, going crazy, kind of hitting his legs, hitting his arms, getting going. And he was in a full sweat within 15 minutes before he was out on the court. It was phenomenal. And to watch the guys in the back in the gym at the ATP 250, the things that these guys are doing with bands and stretching, it has little to do with weightlifting. They are super strong, of course, but they're using these bands in ways that I didn't know was possible, to be very frank. And the stretching and the shadow stroking that's done, even at that level, is truly remarkable. So guys, players, next time your coaches ask you to shadow stroke, know that it is being done at the highest level constantly.
Definitely. All right, we'll keep speed dating the last couple minutes. How can we master from Steve-O all the tennis stances for every situation in the game? Is there a course, a workshop, a book, or an app that kind of set that, I guess, for stances?
Stances. So as far as like open stance, closed stance, semi, is that?
I guess so. I don't know. It says stances.
I don't know. I'm sure there's an amazing YouTube series. There's a YouTube channel for everything these days. So I would look that up, but your private coach should have a very good understanding of the stances and when to use them. We see a lot of open stance on TV these days, but that's, kind of because the ball is just coming so dang fast. Maybe in the junior level, I'm a big advocate of people being in a semi stance as much as possible. To put it simply, the whole point is weight transfer. So whatever stance you can be in to transfer your weight the easiest, that's the stance you should be in.
Great. And do you have any recommendations? These are all kind of coming at you.
Yeah.
For players on tour to manage sleep and changes to avoid jet lag.
Ooh, this is another Harvard plug, but Whoop. I don't know if you guys have heard of Whoop, but yeah, the Whoop bands that goes on your wrist. It manages your sleep and kind of tells you your sleep, how you did there with your sleep, and if you're able to give your full effort the next day in your training. The Whoop is an amazing product that I think every athlete should be using, or something similar to it.
Great. What do you think, what do you teach to keep a player from mentally self-destructing? I mean, that I saw a lot in college.
Yes, gosh, yes. Journaling and visualizing are the biggest things. Journaling, because if you can go through and, if you do have a self-destructive moment, if you can journal and just figure out, why was I feeling that way? And what can I do to negate that feeling, to get away from that feeling? Often distracting yourself. I was a crazy person and would have a rubber band and would snap myself every time I felt myself starting to spiral. And that little bit of pain kind of snapped me back. Now, I would not advocate for you guys to do that. There's much healthier ways of going about that. Journaling, visualizing every situation you can be in, whether it's somebody that you think is cheating you, other people getting involved. Visualize that situation and visualize how you want to react to that situation.
Very, very cool. And I guess there was a question about yourself, how you stayed motivated when you were injured. Is there a way, what was that drive in you, or you would recommend to people that suffer an injury and could be out for a long time? Are there any key things to keep you motivated? And
Yeah, I read a lot, and two of the books I read, one was The Interview with Tennis, which I think every player and coach should read if they haven't already. But the other one was not a tennis book. It was The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Amazing book. Really changed my perspective on life. I was very tough on myself, very hard on myself, and then that kind of changed my perspective to enjoy the process a lot more. So yeah, just an easy answer, but definitely could give you an hour-long one on that one.
yeah, no, and that's key. I think that for kids and at all levels, those key books. Now we have, apps and things, but I think that the motivation, it's so hard when getting an injury and wanting to get out there is one of the toughest things. And it goes back to that mental side. If you visualize, yourself getting better, I think, it's sad. I'm a huge Dominic Thiem fan, and to see how his struggle, to have that confidence back, knowing just that wrist, like so much of who he is. And there is such an amazing story. And there's a reason we love those underdog stories when people do come back, when Tommy Haas won comeback player of the year, more times than anyone else, going out of the top 100, back in the top 10. That's like perseverance on steroids. Everyone loves those stories. But any final thoughts or final words? I really appreciate you coming out and helping us here.
Yeah, no, this has been amazing. I would actually even love to do it again. I feel like there's so much more to even talk about. Getting down to it, guys, players, coaches that are watching, mental training is so, so, so important. I hope that as coaches, we can be a little bit more open-minded to new ideas and practices that maybe we are not familiar with, and to learn. And players, I know that, mental training can be boring or, seem boring, but I can promise you, and there's study after study that's out there that just proves that mental training is the difference maker in so many situations. So please take advantage of it, and take advantage of APEAK, please, because it's our goal is to be affordable and accessible for everybody. So we'd love for everybody to take advantage of it.
That's great. And the last one you have is your father, played a big role in your childhood. Any advice for parents who are starting the journey with their children?
Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm trying to turn on the light here. It's a little dark. Not happening. Sorry, guys. Parents, just support your child as much as you can.
Make it fun.
Yeah, have fun, enjoy it. Your child, your player does not want to lose. They do not want to miss that ball. And most importantly, they want you to be proud of them. So, I tell my parents, and I've had to kick parents out and stop working with, certain players because of this, but I do not, when my player comes off a court, I don't ask them the score. I don't ask how they did. I ask them, did they have fun? And if the answer is yes, I could really care less how the rest of it went. Of course, there's a time to go into the strategy and, what could have been done better, what have you. But the main and most important thing is, did you have fun? So please, parents, if you can avoid it at all costs, don't ask the score, don't ask how they did, just ask if they had fun. And, let's go from there.
Thank you so much, Jake Rother, big fan, and I look forward to a lot more adventures together. And you'll be getting a lot of requests for Harvard. Great plugs. And AP, start journaling, visualizing, and having fun.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Thank you, ICL. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Jake. Take care.
Come on, guys.